Hi, everybody. Tim Hughes here. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite. With me today, I've got Gavriella, and we're going to be talking about allyship. We're going to be talking about inclusion, diversity, lots of really important subjects around recruitment and working with people and that. Before we dive in, Gavriella, explain where we can get hold of you.
You can find me on LinkedIn, just search my name. And then you can also find me on my website, which is www.gavriellaSchuster.com.
And on your website you can get access to your TED Talk.
You can get access to my TED Talk, to my ebook, and very soon to training that's available.
And if you don't feel energized after coming off Gavriella's TED Talk, I watched it and I was up against the door back there. I mean, you come on the stage and there's some great interviews there. You're interviewing the CEO of Microsoft.
Yes. Yes. Wow. Satya Nadella.
Amazing. So tell us, you've done a TED Talk, you've interviewed, and you've worked for Microsoft. So how if I'm a 20-year-old female, how do I be you? Because I don't want to be me, because I'm white male, and so how can I be you?
Well, I think you start off by having a vision for yourself about what you want, and then building the plan for how you might want to get there. Now, no, it's not going to actually happen that way, but it's good to have a roadmap. So for me, my objective from the time that I started working was really to be a generalist. So there's some people that really want to be specialists. There's others that want to be generalists. I want to be a generalist. So every time I would be in a role for long enough to feel like, oh, I've done this before, that would be my trigger to say, then I should find something else to go do. And so I did that. And through that process, through my career, I ended up crossing about 6 different disciplines. I was with Microsoft for almost 26 years. I had 14 different jobs, and I became a very good generalist. And what I realized as a Monday morning quarterback, looking back, was that all of those changes helped me in my more senior roles to really have a 360 view of the organization and understand the operations and the customers and the way we made money, our licensing, and the marketplace. And so bringing all of that together was really very helpful.
Okay, I could interview you about the interview that you've got with the CEO of Microsoft, just in that. Because there was all, I was thinking, I wonder. Anyway, we're here to talk allyship.
Yes.
So I've done a podcast on this before, and I had to go and Google it and find out, and to find out what that meant before I went in the podcast and talk about it. And so explain to me what it is.
Allyship.
Yeah.
So when you think about organizations that you enjoy working with and people you enjoy working with, they are people that make you feel good. They make you feel successful. They make you feel like you belong where you are, and they help bring out the best in you so that you can be your authentic self every day and get better every day. And the way you create that level of inclusion is through allyship. Allyship is about going alongside with people, being curious, understanding their point of view, listening to them, really understanding where they're coming from. If somebody says something to me that seems like from left field, right, and I don't really know how they got there, I could just dismiss it. That wouldn't be a good way for me to listen. Or I could ask, like, give me more context. Tell me more about how did you come to this, right? That level of curiosity, that's allyship. So allyship is when you reach across to someone who is not like you. You don't make assumptions about them.
Yeah.
And you stand alongside them and support them, and you advocate on their behalf, and you make sure that you are getting others to also listen to them. So I've created a way to think about what allies do. I believe that when you are a great ally and you're practicing allyship every day for everyone around you, that you are creating a great inclusive environment, and you are being a great leader.
And it's different from being a mentor or a sponsor.
It is. It is. I mean, mentoring people and sponsoring them is ultimately part of an ally journey, in getting to know someone. But it's different in that you can be an ally for a complete stranger, right? And it's as you get to know them through something like mentorship, or that you can become a sponsor.
And I think it's what I see from my own position in leadership is that we are all different, and we all think differently because we all have different experiences.
Right.
And we can't. And the worst thing we can do, well, the worst thing that I want is another Tim Hughes. We've got enough. We've got one. That's enough. And what I want to do is be able to understand other people because I want to bring out the best in them.
Right. Exactly. And so many of us, though, don't. It's not our natural tendency. So our natural tendency is to gravitate, one, towards people who are like us, not
Yes.
people who are not like us. And then two, we project our own experiences on others. And we make assumptions about what they may be thinking, what they may be doing. And so allyship is the opposite of that. It is making an intentional, working with intention to reach out to those who are not like you, and then learning more about them and their experiences. And then it also is about being more aware of what's going on around you, right? So that you are hearing if somebody is being interrupted, dismissed, if a comment is made that has a racist undertone, a sexist undertone, right? That you are aware of what's going on and you have the courage to respond in the moment, and take action.
And I think that as leaders, we need to be creating more inclusive environments. Everybody should be able to come to work and say and do their best without having people judging them or whatever, because everybody wants that, so we should provide an environment to do that. So what as I'm a white male middle class individual. What as a white male middle class person can I do to do that within my organization?
Yeah, so I really tried to make this very simple and taken the word allies and made that an acronym. So
Okay,
that you can
fantastic.
remember the 6 steps that you can take. So 1 is be an advocate, 2 is to listen, 3 is to lift up those around you, 4 is to be inclusive, 5 is to elevate others, and then 6 is to be a sponsor. And so I'll explain those, but let me first say that this is part of a diversity, equity, and inclusion strategy, right? That unless you have that inclusive environment, it doesn't matter how much diversity you have in your organization, you won't get the value out of it. When you create that inclusive environment where everyone's voice is heard, where people feel like they're treated equitably and they belong, then you can really go out and recruit for diversity so that you get all of those different perspectives. But if you haven't created the right environment, it doesn't matter what kind of diversity you have, because you'll never get the value out of it. So, yeah.
I was going to say, sorry. I was going to say, in your TED Talk, you talk about the fact that, and I've worked for lots of organizations where we have a bonus for the employees to go out and recruit more people, because the measurement on HR is to get people as fast as you can and get them to stick.
Right.
But the point you make in the TED Talk is what happens is that white male middle class people go out and recruit white male middle class people.
Yeah. I mean, the challenge with many recruiting strategies of like, people will bring in people they know, people they went to school with, people they've worked with before. The challenge with that is that they are often then just like the person that's in your organization. And so if you don't have a very diverse organization, then you will not get a very diverse organization, because you will get the mining of their network. And so you have to work with intention. As an individual, you can work with intention to expand your network, to be more diverse, to be not like you. And then you can start to create a succession pipeline that is more diverse and that will bring in diversity. But generally what you want to do is point your recruiters at the communities of people that you'd actually like to recruit.
And that's part of having a diversity, inclusion, and equity strategy, I guess, in terms of saying, this is the way that you need to be working, and obviously cascading it down through the organization.
Yes, absolutely. So the key with the different actions that you can take as an ally is that 3 of them are reactive actions you can take, and 3 of them are proactive actions. So the 3 reactive actions are advocate, listen, and lift. And what that means is you can do that for anyone, whether you actually know them or not, right? Being an advocate is probably the one that takes the most courage, because it means that when you are in a group, you are listening for what I'll call microaggressions, right? You are listening for things that may make someone else in the room feel like they don't belong, like they're singled out, like they are less than, right? Or even like I said, have like some sort of undertone of a racial slur or a sexist slur, and you are stepping into that space and owning your response. So as opposed to like if somebody said something about women and I was the only woman in the room, if I then say something, then it sounds very defensive, right? So for instance, if someone said, hey, Gavriella, why don't you take notes? Women are better at that.
Yeah.
Right? If I say, no, like that sounds very defensive. Like it sounds, oh, you're not a team player, right? But if an ally in the room steps in and is like, I think it would be great if we just did a round robin on taking notes.
Yeah.
Right? Then what they're doing is they're decentering that attention from me, and they're owning that and stepping in and diverting and changing the conversation, right? If somebody makes a comment, say about, I don't know, like, there's new gender neutral restrooms, and somebody makes like some negative comment about, why do we need more restrooms? And instead of like either skirting that or laughing it off or whatever, you step in and you say, I really appreciate that, we have added these additional gender neutral restrooms. I know that there's a number of times that would have been very helpful for me and others around me, right?
Nice. Okay.
Then it takes the burden off of if there's an individual in the room who feels really uncomfortable about that because they plan to use those restrooms, right? So as opposed to saying, well, that's really for people who are transgender, like as opposed to like pointing that out.
Immediately you're basically placing judgment on using
You're placing a judgment on something, right? You just step into it and you diffuse that situation, and you signal to the whole room a more appropriate way of thinking about that.
Excellent. Great advice. Because I think quite often what can happen is that you replace tension with more tension, because what happens is that you say something which is in effect embarrasses the person and rather than diffusing the situation.
Okay. Right. And so your goal isn't to place blame or shame on somebody who may have said something without thinking, right? Or not even understood what,
and you've got to give people a chance.
Right? Yeah. But it's also not to ignore it, because when you ignore it, then you are saying it's okay.
Yeah, you are. Yeah, you're as guilty. Yeah. So that's really good. I mean, and it takes bravery to do that, but as leaders, it comes with a job.
Yes, but what I advocate is that everyone can be a leader in that way, right? Yes. Everyone who's present is empowered to be an ally and to step into that space. And by doing so, you actually establish and create your own leadership.
Absolutely. So I think that's a great example of advocate, listen, and lift. Brilliant.
Yes.
And so include, elevate, and sponsor.
So include, elevate, and sponsor are more proactive, meaning that you must be in partnership with somebody in order to do that on their behalf. Because when you are, say, including somebody in a conversation they're not in, right? So if you are in a room and you think, oh, Sarah's missing from this conversation, she's the expert. And if you call that out without having, had a conversation with her, then there could be good reasons on her part why she declined participating, right? And so you'd kind of get the opposite effect. You're more singling her out for something rather than engaging her. Whereas if you have had previous conversations with Sarah about, you're the subject matter expert, I'd really like to make sure that you are engaged in all of the conversations regarding this topic. Are you okay if I bring you in? And she says, sure. Then when you say, well, I would like to reschedule this meeting until Sarah can join us, then you are doing her a favor, right? You are being an ally. If Sarah's in the room and there's just so many voices and everybody's talking over each other, we all know those, but you really want to hear what Sarah has to say, then if you had that conversation before, you can say, Sarah, I really value your opinion because you're the expert on this. Would you mind sharing with us how you think about blah, 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 right? But it's very important that you've had that conversation before. Elevate is about helping somebody to get projects or things that they do in part of their job that give them more visibility, that elevate their position. It is about bringing them into conversations that will elevate their position and their voice. But again, if you haven't had that conversation with somebody beforehand, then it could have the opposite effect.
Yes, yeah. And in certain cultures, it's often seen as it's certainly in, say, Nordic cultures, actually being above everybody else or being is actually not wanted. It's not something that's part of the culture.
Right.
So definitely, yeah. And then sponsor.
And then sponsor. So that's something that's like an outcome, right? So you can't go to someone, I can't say, hey, Tim, would you sponsor me, right? Because you don't know me well enough to actually. Sponsorship is about, being able to put your brand on the line, put your name on the line on behalf of somebody else to bring them forth and sponsor them into an opportunity. And so, it is really about making sure that you understand what their aspirations are, where they want to go, what they want to do, and then sponsoring them into the opportunities that are aligned with their potential and their own view of what they want.
In your TED Talk, sorry to keep coming back to it, you end with a call to action, which is 3 things. You know what they are because you know your TED Talk off by heart. One of my colleagues has just done one, and he knows it off by heart. and you end your call to action is be an ally, be a leader. Actually, and you're right, everybody's a leader. One of the things that I found when I was an individual contributor, I always thought if I could just be a leader, everybody will do what I tell them to do. And of course, when you're a leader, you can't tell people what to do. So in fact, even when you're an individual contributor, you're a leader.
Right.
And some of the leadership teams I work for, we expected the individual contributors to stand up and be leaders. So when you say be an ally, be a leader is actually inclusive of everybody. And then you say be an agent of change.
Yep. Yes. Yes. So the idea is that we are all empowered to change the environment around us. There's so many times where you might sit in a organization and you think they don't do this right. I don't feel welcome here, right? And the idea is you are empowered to actually change that culture, right? And when you step into be an ally, then you start building allies as well. You must be an ally in order to build your allies, and you start to be an agent of change. And as we talked about, those are the key elements of leadership. Leaders understand that when they paint the picture of something different, and they rally others together, they can get them to follow them. That's leadership. Leadership isn't an organizational anointment of something, right?
Yep. And just to go over that again, so that's advocate, listen, lift, include, elevate, and sponsor.
Yes.
I read my notes.
Simple actions.
Yeah. Gavriella, it's been excellent. I've been looking forward to this. I'll keep quoting your TED Talk. I really enjoyed your TED Talk. It is very, very powerful and very, very energetic. And people watching this, I certainly recommend that you go over to Gavriella's website and watch it. Remind people where they can get hold of you, obviously on your website.
On my website, GavriellaSchuster.com. On LinkedIn, Gavriella Schuster. I'm really the only one. So if you look it up, you'll find me. and please reach out. I look forward to hearing from you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your insight. It's a fascinating subject and something that we all have to do. It's not a nice to have anymore. We have to do this.
We have to do it.
Because this is about making society and business better.
Yes, absolutely. Cool. Thank you.
And thank you for. So thanks very much, Gavriella, and I'll see you online.
All right, we'll see you online.